Hello guys, welcome to my next video. As you know, we are learning routing in Angular, and so far we have made a great achievement and we have set up routing, understood the basic concept of routing, and also you guys have coded along with me. And for the convenience of you guys, I have added my GitHub handlers link in each of my videos, so you can just download that and practice it on your own. Uh, Topic of current video is how we can handle query params in routing in Angular. This is a bit advanced level, how we can preserve the query parameters which are listed in the URL, and how we can reuse those query parameters in another component and in other routing. So to understand this concept, we have to make a certain environment, and in this environment then I will give you example how we can handle those query parameters and how we can leverage the power of Angular, and how we can easily set up all these things. To set up an environment, let's see that on my screen, how we can set up that environment. So if you see my screen, here we have couple of list of servers, and whenever I click on certain server, the status and the certain data is appear next to that server. But there is one thing. If I want to edit some server, I have to add an edit functionality, so that whenever I click on that, it should redirect me, it should take me to the edit server component. So let's implement that. In this server component HTML, I'm going to include a button. So what this button, I'm going to add classes to that button also, just to make it look nicer. And let's name that button as edit. And on click event, I am gonna call a function call on edit. So we'll save that, and we will create that function here in the component 2. So now when we call on edit, it should redirect us to edit server component. As you know, for the convenience of you guys, I have already set up all this environment. I have created edit component, and I have created the required HTML for that already. So this initial setup is already done. Now we are going to call that route, and that will navigate us to edit server component. How we are going to do that? We must have we already have learned that, and you must remember that. If you don't remember it, please go back to my previous video and see that how we can navigate to different components through coding. There are three ways of navigating to different components. One is when we click on HTML, when we add attribute to the HTML. The another thing is if we have to redirect to another component from another route from component or from TypeScript file, we can do that also. To do that, we have to include in our constructor, we have to load router. And as you okay, this name is conflicting with this router, so I will make it route. So as you see, this route will automatically be imported in this file too from angular/router. So now we can use this route, and we can navigate to different page. So you see, under this route we have different options, and we will go by navigate. And now since we are already on this URL, if you see my screen, we are already on this URL where this is called servers. So we are already there. So we just need to append the newly added part of URL. This will call it as a relative path. We do not have to write all the path again. Just if we want to stay on this URL and append a certain another name of component in the URL to call that, we can just append it, and this is called a relative path. So we'll come here and we will add it just in the URL. So this will take us to edit component in the browser. So just to set up as relative path, we have to pass an object to which will called we have to pass parameters called relative to, and we will make it relative to this dot router. So this dot router, it will be relative. Now let's see how that works. So I have already, oh, this button is not looking nicer. It seems it is not calling the correct class of bootstrap because there was a typo in this code, and now when we get to that page, now it seems that it is taking the bootstrap class which we have already injected in the project. So when I click on this edit, so as we have just learned, we have just saw, it will append in the URL, it will just append after the 3, this is the ID of this server, after 3 it will append /edit, and it will take us to another new component, and there will be certain input fields which will appear so that we can edit the server. So when I click on that, please see here in the URL gets changed and the edit functionality is there. Now the core concept of this video is how we can handle these query parameters. This is important thing. Just to understand that thing, we have set up the environment, we have called this added component, and now the important thing is this is the important trick of the video, what we are going to learn. So when I click on that, you see when I click on certain server, there is a query parameter called allow edit 1. There is a query parameter called allow edit 1, and same thing for all these IDs, there is a query parameter allowed edit 1. So when I click on edit server, I want to keep this query parameter. I want to change the URL for sure. I want to change the URL because I want to load another component which is hosted on another route called edit server, but I want to keep this query parameter to new URL too. So how we can keep that? There is a very easy trick supported by Angular. There's a very easy directive for that. So when we come here in this navigate method, we will pass another attribute called query params handling, and there are certain parameters we can pass here. With this query param handling, we can set it as merge. So this merge thing will merge the existing query parameters with the new parameters. If we want to append mix two different parameters, which is one query param is hosted on previous URL and another query param is hosted on new URL, so we can merge both of them and we can just keep those in the URL. In our current scenario, we have just one query parameter. We do not want to merge that. We just want to preserve that. So that it should be preserved and it should go on another URL too when we call some other route. So how we can do that? Here is attribute, we will set it as preserve. So now let's see the effect of it. So when we come here, you see when I click on edit, here we go, this allowed edit attribute, this allow edit parameter is preserved now, and we can still see that in the URL. So that is the beauty to preserve this query parameter in the Angular, and how we can reuse that based on our certain scenarios and based on our conditions, how we want to implement that. Now since we have passed these parameters, we preserve this parameter to new URL also. Now let's see how we can use it. I mean, we can retrieve that, we can use that. How we'll use that? Let's try that. From this servers, I am from the servers, for all the servers we are passing this allowed edit 1. This will make it all the time, this will make it true. But here in our condition, I am going to make some changes in that. I'm going to make if server ID is 3, then I want to pass it as 1, otherwise I want to pass it as 0. So I have added this condition. This will make a certain change in allowed added parameter. If the server ID will be 3, then it will make the allowed added attribute 1, otherwise it will make it as 0. So let's see the effect of it. When we come here, when I click on that, you see allowed edit is 0 now. When I click on another server name, its ID is 2 and allowed edit is 0 again. Now I am going to click on third server and the ID of third server is 3. As you see, we have added in the condition that for 3 server ID, it should make the allowed added parameter as 1 or as true. So when I click on that, here we go. It has automatically changed the allowed added parameter and made it as 1 or made it as true. So when I click on that, now we have to implement this logic. We have to retrieve that parameter from the URL and we have to read it. Based on this reading, we should decide whether we are going to allow the server to add it or not. If it is allowed, we are going to allow that. If it is not allowed, we will display a message that server allow edit is false and you cannot edit this server. So how we are going to do that? Here we have already created edit server component and all the functionality is already implemented. Now I am going to add this condition just to say if we can edit the server or not. So here I am going to define one variable and I am going to initialize that as false. So this is allow edit and I have initialized that as false already, and here I am going to implement that. So we have defined a variable and this is by default allow edit is false. Now I am going to add a functionality where we can retrieve the query parameter passed in the URL, and based on that we can make decision that how we can implement our logic. To do that, as you guys know, we have to construct a router, and to do that we have to initialize activated route. So we have added that in initialize that in constructor, and as you guys know, it should be imported in the TypeScript file too. So it automatically got imported, and I'm going to remove that came by here imported by mistake. So we have imported activated route and we have initialized that too. Now we are going to use that. To use it in this ng on it, I am going to do this router, then there is a called query params, and I am going to subscribe that. So guys, you must remember that this query param basically is an observable, and it will keep detecting, keep listening the changes. If something changes in the URL, automatically the reactive action will be triggered. So if you guys do not know about this query parameter, if you are new to my video and my channel, please go back to my previous videos and where you can see how we can use this query parameter observable and how we can retrieve that, how the reactive actions takes place based on the query parameter changes. So you can go back and see my video in the playlist and you can just learn that concept too. So we have added this query parameter. Now based on that, I am going to initialize its type as param, and as you know, we have to import that too from Angular router, and I'm going to initialize a method for that. And now we can use this param and we can implement logic how we want. So I am going to do this dot allow edit, and this params allowed edit. So I am checking that if this allowed edit param is 1, which is passed from the URL. If you see, there's allowed edit parameter which is passed in the URL. So we will just read that allowed edit and from queries param observable, and based on that reading we will make decision. So I am gonna make decision here that if params allowed edit is 1, then I am going to make this allow edit as true. So we'll initialize the value as true. In other case, we will make it false. So by default, this allow edit is already false. So based on this query param decision, we are going to edit and we are going to make changes. So now this dot allow edit will be reactive based on the query parameters we have passed in the URL. Now we are going to implement its effect in HTML2. So we'll open edit server component, and here I am going to add h4 tag to display a message. If before that I'm going to use another directive called ngIf. So if allow edit is false, so if it is false, I'm going to display a message that you are not allowed to edit the server. In other case, I'm going to wrap all this thing in another div. So I'm going to wrap all this code in a separate div, and I'm going to add ngIf directive here too. So here, based on that, I will say that allow edit is true. So if allow edit is true, this part of HTML will be executed, and this will display all the 2 input fields and edit button and all the functionality where we can edit the server. If this allow edit is not true, if it is false, then of course this condition will not run because it is not true. And based on this logic, this h4 heading should show up and display as the message that you are not allowed to edit the server. So let's see how that logic is working, if it is working or not. Now we come here and we see, you see here the status is server status is online, and when we click on certain things, when you click on edit, if allowed edit is 1, I am allowed to edit the server, and I can see the input fields also. So here in test server, when I click on that, you see allowed edit is 0. So based on this 0, I am getting message you are not allowed to edit the server. So guys, this was really important concept, although we need that concept in certain environment where we get deeper in the coding, but it is very much important to learn how we can handle these query params, how we can pass these query params, how we can merge those query params. These are all functionalities which are supported by Angular. Of course, Angular is a very powerful library, and it gives us lot of room and flexibility to make the coding easy and fun. So stay connected, and my next video I am going to bring more exciting topics about Angular, so you can learn that, and you can just follow my videos. There are a lot more coming up in my next videos. Stay tuned. I'll see you guys in next video. Thank you.